brother broke my nose and my mom laughed it off. The school counselor's mandatory report changed everything. My brother Danny is autistic and 3 years younger than me. Growing up, my mother used his diagnosis to excuse everything he did wrong, not to get him help or teach him boundaries, but to avoid parenting altogether. When he threw my homework in the fireplace, she said he didn't understand. When he smashed my laptop during a meltdown, she said I shouldn't have left it where he could see it. When he hit me, which happened weekly, she'd say he was just expressing himself and I needed to be more understanding. She never got him proper therapy, never worked on coping strategies, never taught him that hurting people was wrong. She just laughed and said boys will be boys, special boys especially. The worst part was Danny was actually very capable of learning. His special education teacher told my mom repeatedly that he responded well to structure and clear boundaries at school. He never hit anyone there because there were consequences. But my mother said school didn't understand how hard things were for Danny at home and refused to implement any of their suggestions. She preferred having a violent son she could make excuses for over actually helping him develop. I was 15 and Danny was 12 when it happened. I was doing homework at the kitchen table and Danny wanted my calculator. I told him I was using it, but he could have it in 20 minutes. He asked my mom and she said just give it to him. He needs it more. I said I was literally using it for a test review. Danny grabbed for it and I held it away. My mother was standing right there when Danny punched me full force in the face. I heard the crack before I felt the pain. Blood poured everywhere. My nose was clearly broken, shifted to the side of my face. My mother laughed. She actually laughed and said I should have just given him the calculator. She told me to put ice on it and stop being dramatic while Danny sat at the table using my calculator to type random numbers. I walked myself to the emergency room because my mother said she couldn't leave Danny when he was upset, even though he was perfectly calm playing with the calculator. The nurse asked how I broke my nose and I told the truth. She asked where my parents were and I said my mom was home with my brother. The nurse's face changed and she called in a social worker. The social worker asked more questions and then said she had to make a report. The next day, Child Protective Services showed up at our house. My mother was furious, saying I'd betrayed the family by telling outsiders our business. She kept insisting it was just sibling stuff, boys being boys. The CPS worker asked why a 12-year-old breaking a 15-year-old's nose was funny to her. My mother said the worker didn't understand autism. The worker said she actually specialized in cases with developmental disabilities, and what she understood was that my mother was failing both her children. The investigation revealed that Danny hadn't been to his behavioral therapy in 2 years because my mother said it was too much hassle. He hadn't seen his developmental pediatrician in 18 months. The school had sent dozens of messages about resources and support that my mother ignored. She'd been collecting disability payments for Danny, but not using them for his care. Instead, she'd been spending them on herself while telling everyone how hard it was to have a special needs child. CPS mandated that Danny return to therapy immediately and that my mother attend parenting classes for special needs families. They also required family therapy, where I finally got to say how terrified I was in my own home. The therapist asked my mother why she thought violence was acceptable. My mother said it wasn't violence. It was just Danny being Danny. The therapist said that was exactly the problem. Danny actually thrived once he got back into proper therapy. Within 6 months, he hadn't hit anyone once. He learned coping strategies, communication tools, and most importantly, that hurting others had consequences. The therapist said his previous violence was largely because he'd learned from my mother that it got him what he wanted. My mother had to complete a year of parenting classes where other parents called her out constantly. One father whose son was also autistic said she was using the diagnosis as an excuse for lazy parenting and making life harder for everyone with autism by perpetuating stereotypes. My mother tried to argue, but the instructor sided with the other parents. She failed the class twice because she kept insisting she'd done nothing wrong. The third time, she finally passed by just repeating what they wanted to hear, but she told me she still thought everyone was overreacting.